Hey, it's your book hound here coming at you with another book we want to howl about. As we say, if you like what you see here, hit subscribe and we'll be back with you every week with great reviews and cool stuff. So today we're going to talk about What She Found, which is a Tracy Crosswhite novel by Robert Dugoni. This is part of a series. I think it's the 9th book in the series featuring Tracy Crosswhite, who is a accomplished and decorated Seattle homicide detective, and she's had many adventures before, none of which I've read. This is the first Tracy Crosswhite book I've read, but you have that feeling when you're coming into a series like there's all this backstory, which I don't know, but she's had a lot of adventures as a homicide detective, and as of this book, she is assigned to cold cases, and she is clearing a serial killer case with DNA evidence where bodies were dug up under a house, and they've been, closing all these cases, and that's what she's doing. But cut back to 1996. The story really starts in 1996, where an investigative reporter named Lisa Childress is driving through Seattle, through an industrial neighborhood of Seattle at 2 o'clock in the morning, on her way to meet a confidential source. So it's dangerous. This woman her job is to uncover secrets that make powerful people look bad. So she's living a dangerous life, and she's kind of an interesting character. Dugoni describes her as being autistic. She's kind of a little, if you know people like this is a real thing. She's a little bit rigid. She doesn't really deal well with relationships. She's married with a small child, but she, walks out of the house at all hours to deal with her investigation. She leaves her husband to take care of the baby, and she doesn't report into her editor. She's kind of a difficult person, but she's really, good at investigations, and she gets great stories. So they let her do this. She goes to meet her source and finds him shot to death, and she's then attacked. And it's not clear what happens to her, and that's the root of the story. That's 1996. So jump back to 2022. So 24 years later, her Childress's daughter, who was 2 years old then, is now a 26-year-old woman named Anita Childress. She approaches Tracy Crosswhite and says, "I want you to figure out what happened to my mother." And Crosswhite's like, "Who's your mother?" Like this, this is one of these stories that like came and went. Like nobody remembers this woman, whatever. It's like things like this happen. She disappeared. They never found her body. They never found her alive. As far as that, they assume she's dead, right? The assumption is she was murdered, but by whom? There's absolutely nothing to go on here. Crosswhite's looking at this case, and she's like, it's 24 years later. Nobody remembers anything. Nobody knows who she was trying to meet, where she was going, what she was working on, whatever. So Crosswhite is at first says the really obvious thing, which is, Anita, it's probable that your father killed her. That's the natural conclusion here. That somehow this guy was married to her, was tired of her wandering around at all hours, and leaving him at home without any warning, and he just killed her. And Anita's like, you know what, if that's the truth, I want to know the truth. I just want to know what happened. So Crosswhite takes on this case, but immediately is told by the chief of police to drop it. And the reason the chief wants her to drop it is the chief needs more successful cold cases, more like the serial killer with the DNA, where they can keep going to the city council and saying, look, we're solving crimes, and don't defund us. This is a subtext of the story, this so-called defund the police movement, which I think in Seattle has some traction, and it's a device in the book to, make some pressure on Crosswhite. But she doesn't want to give up the case, so she investigates it even though she's told not to, right? So that makes a good story, right? She's going against the boss. And she digs into it, and at first it really does look like there's absolutely nothing to go on, but she gets some information from Anita about some of the possible stories that Childress was looking into, the investigations, and one of them was an investigation into possible theft of drugs by Seattle police officers, and she starts to tug on that thread, and things start to happen, and I don't want to get too far into it, but it brings her right to the front door of some of the people she works with, and it's sort of like, is it possible that some of her friends in the police force who were active at that time were stealing drugs and may have killed Childress to cover it up? Maybe, right? But it's a great story. It's a good mystery, and you'll be very surprised where it takes you. I mean, Dugoni knows what he's doing. It's an effective story, and I like the character. You get a bit of a glimpse of Crosswhite's home life. She has a small child the same age that Anita was when her mother disappeared, so she feels emotionally connected to it. But she is going against the boss, and that will cause trouble for her. But you'll just have to read it if you want to find out where it goes.